Hi, my name is Dana Peterson, and I'm the Chief Economist at the Conference Board. So, what are CEOs thinking about for 2021 and beyond? Well, we have answers. We conducted our C Suite Challenge survey towards the end of last year to understand what exactly businesses are focused on, both internally as well as externally. What are the high impact elements and also some of the low impact factors? But more importantly, what are some of the lessons from the pandemic that businesses believe are going to be more persistent? Well, let's start with the external environment. Among the high impact challenges, COVID 19 ranked as number one. Indeed, many firms were concerned about whether or not vaccines would be rolled out and whether or not businesses could get back to normal. Recession risks were also very high. Indeed, we did conduct this survey in late November of last year, and many of the concerns were in the US and China. Fast forwarding to now, I would imagine that both economies would probably be much less concerned about recession. But still, China is very concerned about reduction in demand for globalized goods. Indeed, they are a top producer and also distributor of goods through globalized supply chains. Another issue was, again, vaccine availability. To date, roughly 10% of the world has received at least one shot of a vaccine. So it makes sense that even still, businesses that have globalized networks and multinational firms are very concerned about when economies around the world will be able to reopen, indeed open up their borders and re-engage in activity. Also, another big concern, external concern, was a shift in consumer behaviors. We noticed during the pandemic that certain trends that were still in tow before the pandemic were accelerated, including how consumers consume goods and also services that can be consumed at home. Indeed, many more people were willing to shop online or to shop online and then pick up things at a store. Many more people were willing to stream content. They were also much more likely to work from home, school from home, and even engage in telehealth. So many businesses were faced with challenges for addressing this shifting way in which consumers not only what they buy, but how they buy. And then finally, global political instability was a huge concern back in November of last year when we conducted this survey. Fast forwarding, I would suggest that even still, businesses are very concerned about relations between the US and China, particularly around trade, intellectual property, and also how businesses are able to engage and invest in each other's economies. When we think about the internal environment, things that were of high focus included accelerated digital transformation. In fact, that was the number one concern among CEOs. And certainly with the fact that consumers shifted the way that they behaved online, many businesses realized that automation was necessary. Investment in technology to meet these new demands was paramount. Also, many businesses were focused on improving innovation. That included, again, investing in technology and making sure that they were engaging in the proper processes to meet the rising demands and the changing demands among consumers. And that involved modifying business models, which was number 3 in terms of concerns. What was really fascinating to us was that many businesses were also focused on lowering costs. Indeed, cost-cutting measures included reducing business travel, and we believe that that measure actually is probably going to be sustained beyond the pandemic. But also businesses were looking at ways to engage in remote work, which also has the advantage of lowering costs for your footprint for office space, as well as for being able to find labor around the world in less expensive locales. Finally, the final high cost, high focus, but internal item that businesses were focused on included streamlining processes, making sure that things are running smoothly and that businesses were able to pivot and adapt and remain flexible amid uncertain times. Some of the items that were low impact, but were nonetheless items that CEOs are focused on beyond the pandemic, included things like lack of accessibility to childcare, gender inequality, and shareholder activism. It's interesting that the number one items that were rather of low impact included inflation and volatility in energy prices. And again, we conducted this survey back in November. Fast forwarding to now, inflation would probably be a top concern among businesses who are facing rising prices for raw materials and consequently producer prices. And then businesses must decide whether or not they're going to absorb these prices and existing profit margins, or whether or not they're going to pass those prices on, the higher prices on to consumers. So low focus internal environmental aspects that businesses were a little less focused on included reducing headcount. So that's great. And that suggests that businesses, despite the pandemic, are looking to expand their headcount and also upskill their workers. There was also less focus on inshoring of supply chains. However, I would suggest that businesses are concerned about implications for industrial policies, where governments are thinking about potentially restricting trade in certain key goods. Now, these are the things that businesses are focused on for 2021. But what are some of the elements or factors that businesses believe are going to be more persistent beyond the pandemic? Well, number one, reduced business travel was at the top of the list. So many businesses are realizing that amid the pandemic, they were able to conduct business as their employees worked from home. And moreover, customers didn't seem to have a problem engaging virtually. But going forward, we think there's going to be a healthy mix between remote work and in-person work, given the fact that some businesses, especially those that require innovation and collaboration, will probably favor more so their workers working together in the office, as opposed to other types of activities that can be generated by individual contributors. Automation was a huge factor that businesses believe are going to persist beyond the pandemic. Automation is part of cost savings, but also part of the digital transformation that many businesses expressed that they wanted to engage in. Many businesses were looking at supply chain management, making them more efficient or diversifying them so that the geographical risks are less severe. Also, I mentioned climate change. While that wasn't a big focus for 2021, businesses do believe that climate change and social factors are going to be important. Indeed, many CEOs are finding themselves thrust into the limelight and having to address social and environmental issues as requested not only by activist shareholders, but also by many of their stakeholders, including the final customer and also their supply chain distributors. So another factor that is here to stay, as I mentioned earlier, is remote work. Many businesses are seeing that remote work works. And so most likely there's going to be a hybridized workplace where some people will work from home exclusively and other people will work from the office exclusively, but that there's going to be a big combination of in-office and at-home work going forward for many businesses. So these are the factors that we see that we heard from CEOs and also their executives for 2021 as well as beyond. Thanks for listening.